Call the police, he's threatening me. That. And my threatening behavior? I said, no, thank you. That was it. No yelling, no swearing, no shoving, no slamming doors. Just a grown man on a calm Saturday morning declining to hand over $450 to a woman. 20 minutes later, red and blue lights flickered across my windows. My kids were crying. My neighbors were suddenly very interested in watering plants they didn't water yesterday. And I stood there thinking, welcome to MAP. My name's Alex. I'm 38. I've spent 15 years at IRS, the one. My wife, Natalie, she's an ER doctor. The kind of person who comes home at 2 a.m. smelling like antiseptic and heartbreak because she's been stitching together strangers' lives while our sleeps. And our kids, Emma, 8 going on philosopher, and Jack, 5 and convinced he's part dinosaur. We've been saving for years for this house. Maple Ridge Drive looked like the American dream. Trimmed lawns, sidewalks the color of chalk dust, neighbors who waved without smiling too hard, which is honestly the sweet spot of suburban friendliness. And when we pulled into the driveway that first day with moving boxes and tired joy, I swear it felt like breathing after holding your lungs shallow for way too long. 3 days in, a welcome package showed up. Not cookies, not a handwritten, "Hey neighbor" card. No, it was a manila envelope thick enough to be a mortgage refinance packet, with embossed letterhead and serif fonts so expensive I think my wallet winced reading them. Maple Ridge Homeowners Association. Quarterly meeting minutes, financial statements, fee schedule, $450 a month, violation structure, architectural guidelines, mailbox rules, lawn height limits, trash bin curfew times. It was less welcome and more welcome. And by the way, we own your weekends now. You ever hold a paper and instantly feel your stomach tighten? That's what this was. Not because the rules were strict. I've lived near real HOAs before, but because they were too polished, too corporate, too confident. Real neighborhood volunteers don't produce financial statements cleaner than Fortune 500 audit reports. Retired suburban boards do not casually use embossed seals and premium cardstock unless somebody's laundering legitimacy where sunlight doesn't reach. I did what I always do, what my job trained me to do. I followed the paperwork. Property deed? No HOA covenant. County records? Nothing. State registry? 0 filings. IRS nonprofit database. Empty. Maple Ridge HOA didn't exist. At least not legally. But somebody was collecting dues. A lot of them. And one person seemed very, very invested in keeping that machine running. Karen Wilson. I learned her name before I learned where to find the nearest grocery store. Retired real estate agent, according to the welcome pamphlet. But her lifestyle? Mercedes, security cameras, fresh landscaping like a golf course with anxiety, manicure so polished it probably had its own zip code. I wasn't judging. Okay, maybe a little, but 15 years in federal tax work teaches you a certain rhythm, a pulse and numbers, and hers screamed one thing. Lifestyle does not match declared income. So I walked across the street, folder in hand, polite smile, ready for a calm adult conversation. She met me at the door like she'd been waiting, like she'd seen me coming through the blinds and already rehearsed her lines. Legal technicalities don't matter when community standards are at stake, she said, stepping forward like each brick in her driveway was a stepping stone into queenhood. I laid out my findings. No registered HOA. No nonprofit filings. No covenants on the deeds. No authority. She didn't blink. Didn't stutter. Didn't even breathe wrong. Instead, she smiled. One of those thin smiles with teeth, but no warmth, and tapped her nails against her porch railing like a Morse code warning. The families who lived here before understood their obligations, she said, which is HOA speak for pay up because everyone else eventually breaks. I walked home thinking, this isn't a neighborhood committee. This is a private tax disguised as community spirit. And for a while, I tried to let it go. Really, I did. But scammers don't stop when you ignore them. They escalate. First it was letters, then phone calls, then neighbors asking why I didn't support the community. Week 3, there was a Facebook group, Maple Ridge Community Standards, with carefully cropped photos of my grass looking slightly tired after a heat wave, and one post claiming my kids' bikes were dangerous debris. Week 5, city reported noise complaints. That never happened. Code enforcement showing up. Anonymous tips to zoning. By week 6, She had turned my quiet cul-de-sac into a low-budget surveillance thriller with bored suburban extras. And then came December 21st, a night glowing with Christmas lights and peace and cocoa and kids arguing about ornament placement. When two police cruisers slid silently in front of my house, lights splashing across the snow like someone had spilled neon water over holiday magic. Emma froze. Jack hid behind the tree. Natalie stepped in from the kitchen still in scrubs, hair tired, heart tired, looking at me like, please say this isn't what it looks like. Officer Stevens cleared his throat, apologetic but required to perform, and read the complaint: domestic disturbance and financial fraud. In my own home, on the quietest night of December, because one woman with a fake HOA didn't like hearing the word no. And when Karen stepped forward on the sidewalk, arms crossed, smug smile, neighbors flanking her like she was royalty instead of a fraud with a printer and a superiority complex, I knew something had shifted. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd scared me into paying. She thought pressure would break me. But intimidation only works if the other person fears digging deeper. And I hunt tax criminals for a living. So when I picked up one sheet of paper that blew across my lawn, a fake financial statement showing $32,850 a month in dues, I didn't feel scared anymore. I felt ready. Calm. Cold, even. Because Karen hadn't just messed with a neighbor. She picked a fight with a federal analyst trained to follow money like a bloodhound follows scent, patient, relentless, and very, very familiar with the smell of fraud. And if she thought police lights were dramatic, she had no idea what real federal power looked like. I didn't sleep much after that night. Not because I was scared, not anymore. Fear burned off the second I watched Karen hand that fat envelope of evidence to the police officer like she was passing royal decree. No, what kept me awake was clarity, the sort of bone-deep focus you only get when someone pushes your family so far that something inside you stops trembling and starts aiming. I spent that week doing what I do best: documenting, cross-checking, printing records at a FedEx office under fluorescent lights that felt like interrogation lamps. Because when you work for the IRS, you don't touch a single work resource if there's even a whisper of personal conflict. Picture me at 11:45 p.m., drinking gas station coffee, surrounded by stacks of public filings and color-coded tabs, while Christmas elevator music played through cheap ceiling speakers, the soundtrack of calm, lawful vengeance. And here's the funny part. The more I dug, the more it became obvious Karen had no idea what kind of bear she had poked. $450 a month times 73 homes equals $394,200 a year. 8 years of collection is almost equal to $2.85 million. No tax filings, no nonprofit status, no HOA covenant, no governance charter. Just a suburban dictator with a printer, a ring light, and a Mercedes she definitely didn't write off properly. This wasn't just neighborhood bullying. This was an unregistered business, operating across state lines, using coercion, mail, and digital platforms to collect money. That's not HOA territory. That's wire fraud, mail fraud, tax evasion, and illicit coercive enterprise territory. And here's where Karen made her first fatal error. She assumed I'd go quietly. Instead, I built a file thicker than a college anatomy textbook. Screenshots, certified deeds, property maps, printouts from state corporate databases, sworn statements from two elderly neighbors who'd been too scared to talk until now. Mrs. Miller and Mr. Harris, bless them. Mrs. Miller invited me in through her back door like we were in some kind of suburban spy drama, whispering, "I've been praying someone would stand up to her." Mr. Harris handed over a manila folder like it was plutonium. She asked me to help with the books once. I walked out the second I realized she wasn't stupid. She was criminal. Every page, every detail, every trembling signature built momentum. But then Karen escalated again, because when narcissists sense resistance, they don't retreat, they double down. A private investigator started showing up on our street. Black sedan, cheap aftermarket tint, the kind of vibe you get from a guy who watches crime YouTube videos and calls it professional development. Suddenly, my employment became her new weapon. She didn't just want HOA money. She wanted to discredit me at the source. And for a moment, just a moment, she almost did. Because here's the twist people don't understand about institutional integrity. Accusations trigger investigations, even when they're fake. So one cold Monday morning, 3 suits walked into my office building, The kind of slow, heavy footsteps that make the air change before you see the faces. Security took my badge, my computer access card. I packed a cardboard box under the eyes of coworkers who suddenly found the ceiling very interesting. Suspended, pending review of allegations that I'd used federal authority to intimidate private citizens. Karen wasn't just swinging wild. She was strategic. She'd given interviews, talked about government bullying, filed a congressional complaint, whipped up a narrative where she was the brave suburban patriot resisting federal tyranny. 12 people with folding chairs started picketing outside my house for 2 days. Stop IRS abuse. I could handle paperwork. I could handle fraud. But watching Emma cry because a stranger yelled, "Your dad is a bully," at her bus stop. You don't forget that. Natalie tried to stay strong. Dr. Strength, the kind built on long nights and loss and adrenaline. But even warriors break when their family is hunted in daylight. And there I was, sitting at the dining table at 2 a.m., papers spread everywhere, wondering if I'd ruined our lives by refusing to pay $450 a month to a suburban sociopath. But here's the part Karen never understood. When you accuse a federal employee of abuse, the government investigates both sides. Internal affairs tore through my conduct, squeaky clean. Then they turned to hers. And they found gold. Her polished HOA documents, they proved she was running a business. Her digital evidence, metadata revealed fabrication. Those social media posts attacking me, federal wire communications across state lines. Her fake accounting sheets, proof of willful evasion, not ignorance. She built her downfall with premium ink and Office Depot supplies. And the very complaint meant to destroy me triggered a federal whistleblower escalation she never saw coming. Suddenly, this wasn't me versus Karen. It was IRS Criminal Division, TIGTA, FBI Financial Crimes, U.S. Attorney's Office. That's not a neighborhood dispute. That's a federal storm warming up its engines. Meanwhile, I kept my head down because arrogance is loud, but truth works quietly. Karen strutted on camera, talking about government overreach, wrapped in a flag like a suburban supervillain, holding her fake HOA binder like a Bible. And for 8 weeks, I endured shame and whispers and financial fear and the hollow feeling that justice was slow and the world was unfair. Then one morning, the sun cracked across our kitchen, and my phone buzzed with a number only agency folks recognize. "Mr. Scott, internal review is complete. You are fully cleared. Your conduct is exemplary." Then a pause, friendly, heavy, intentional. "And your analysis appears to have initiated a significant investigation. You should prepare for resolutions soon." Translation: get some popcorn and step back. The professionals are coming. I hung up and just sat there, breathing, feeling every cell in my body shift from survival mode to something steadier. Not vengeance, just alignment. You know that moment when a weight lifts so suddenly your spine feels lighter? Like gravity blinked? That was it. Quiet triumph. Not a movie climax. More like watching frost melt under morning light and realizing winter is finally losing. Karen had clawed at me with fake power. Now real power was on its way to her doorstep. And as I sipped my coffee, hands finally steady, I realized a simple truth. Some people fear government because they think it's hunting them. Karen should have feared it because she was the one doing the hunting. And the government doesn't move fast. But when it moves like an avalanche. And she was right in the path. June 15th, 7:30 a.m. Birds were just starting their morning arguments with the sun. Sprinklers hissed across lawns that suddenly felt way too peaceful for what was about to go down. And I was standing in my kitchen quietly buttering toast like any other tired dad, trying to get a normal day started in a life that had not felt normal for months. Then the rumble started, low, steady, purposeful, the kind of sound engines make when they're not just driving, they're arriving. I didn't look out immediately. You don't need to when you've lived inside federal procedure. There's a unique silence right before authority announces itself, like the air steps aside out of respect. Then came the knock. Firm, synchronized, not angry but official. The kind of knock people feel in their teeth. I stepped onto the porch just as 6 federal agents, Navy windbreakers, badges shining in the morning sun like judgment made metal, walked across the street in formation toward Karen's house. 2 FBI vehicles, 2 IRS CI units, 1 local patrol for perimeter support, and a white evidence collection van rolling like it had a job to do and time to keep. I didn't cheer, didn't grin, didn't pump a fist. I just breathed, slow, steady, like my lungs finally remembered their original function. Across the yard, her front door swung open. Karen stepped out in a silk bathrobe, the same shade of smug champagne she'd worn the night she called the cops on my family, holding a coffee mug that slipped from her hand and shattered on her front step when she saw the badges. Federal Agent Walsh, calm eyes, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail, the kind of person you trust immediately and also never want to lie to, spoke with that precise, steady voice federal law uses when it's about to carve truth into stone. Karen Wilson, we have arrest and search warrants. It was surreal watching her freeze. This woman who weaponized eye contact and whispers, suddenly small against her door frame, gripping the wood like reality needed holding. Her knees buckled, face drained. Words got stuck somewhere between denial and the cold weight of consequences. The agents turned her around gently. Not cruel, just firm. Metal clicked around wrists that once pointed at me like I was the criminal. A neighbor gasped. Another recorded, hands trembling, like truth was finally safe to witness. Mrs. Miller came outside too, walker shaking, eyes wide, whispering, "Thank God, thank God." For a moment, the whole street stood still, watching one chapter collapse so another could breathe. And as Karen was guided to the cruiser, she turned her head, slow, shaky, and our eyes met. No words, just recognition. She finally saw the one truth she never believed. Real power doesn't yell. It arrives quietly and ends things. The search was ruthless in the way justice must be when someone hides behind fake authority. Agents streamed in, filing cabinets wheeled out, cash counted under bright lights, $180,000 stacked like arrogance in paper form. Hard drives copied, phones bagged, binders seized, especially the thick, leather-bound HOA command book she'd ruled with like a suburban tyrant. Kids on the sidewalk whispered. Dogs barked once then shut up like they sensed history unfolding. And I just stood there, not triumphant, but grounded, like I was watching equilibrium return molecule by molecule. 9 months earlier, this woman held up fake power like a sword. Today, she was just a person with handcuffs and consequences. And honestly, the moment that hit hardest wasn't the cuffs, or the cash, or the neighbors peeking through blinds. It was the silence. Not fear silence, freedom silence. Like the street finally exhaled. That afternoon, Internal Affairs called again, voice warm this time, like sunlight instead of fluorescent bulbs. You've been fully exonerated. Congratulations, and thank you. They didn't need to say more. Recognition isn't always in headlines. Sometimes it's in the relief that you didn't break, didn't bend, didn't lose yourself. Natalie hugged me. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just tight. Real, the kind of hug that says we made it, and I never doubted you even when it hurt. Emma drew a crayon picture later, Daddy with a cape and the police car driving away, and taped it to the fridge like a trophy. Jack asked if the mean neighbor lady was in timeout now. I told him yes. A very big timeout, probably with less comfortable chairs. And for the first time in months, our house sounded like a home again. Cereal bowls clinking, cartoons humming in the background, laughter not afraid to be loud. Weeks passed. The neighborhood changed. People waved without looking afraid first. Kids rode bikes in loops again. A real HOA formed. Democratic, transparent, boring in the best way. Karen pled guilty to federal tax evasion and fraud. 6 years. Assets seized. Money repaid to every family she'd robbed through intimidation disguised as community standards. Her binder? Now Evidence Exhibit 247A. A symbol of fake power defeated by real accountability. And me? I got my badge back. My access. A quiet commendation. Then, unexpectedly, a new assignment. Financial Crimes Task Force. Apparently, when you dismantle a suburban mafia queen using nothing but patience, ethics, and a printer that jams too often, people notice. But the biggest victory wasn't professional. It was simple. Walking out to the mailbox 1 year later, same time, same sunlight, to find nothing but grocery flyers and kid birthday invitations, instead of threats and fines and fear. Emma rode her scooter past me, hair flying, shouting, "Daddy, look how fast I am." And for the first time since moving in, Maple Ridge felt like the place we thought we bought. Not perfect, not magical, but safe, honest, human. The American dream isn't granite countertops or lawn edges sharp enough to slice bread. It's knowing your kids can play outside without anyone weaponizing power against them. If you made it this far, I want to hear from you. Do neighborhoods make people better, or just give certain people playgrounds for control? Are HOAs necessary, or dangerous when the wrong person gets the clipboard? Have you seen power misused in your community? Did you stand up? Did it cost you something? Drop your story below, and if you disagree, argue with me. Real conversations make communities stronger, not bylaws and fear. And wherever you're watching from, whether you've got pine trees outside your window or palm trees or fire escapes, I hope you remember this. Sometimes doing the right thing means walking through hell with your head up, because on the other side, your kids get to ride their bikes in peace. And that is worth every step. Stay safe, stay stubborn, and never confuse loudness for power. Real power shows up quietly, with handcuffs and a badge.